Welcome back to How to Quilt the Quilt. This is post 3 for 2021. Thanks to my friend Linda for sharing this quilt with us. It is, I believe, 58 by 76. And obviously we have setting blocks. Linda always does so good on her colors. So really take a look at the colors she's used in this. And obviously there was some fabric line involved, but just gorgeous quilt. So some things to think about when we are deciding how we might quilt this quilt. First of all, is there commonality in anything in this quilt? There is. Our main design, as you can see, are roses. So there's roses in all of these prints. Here's more roses. And the large rectangles are definitely all rose prints. The center part of the stars are all solids. And these strips here are, for the most part, solids. The ones that are not read close to solids. So some things that we can keep common throughout the whole quilt. What else helps us in choosing how to quilt it? We know that we have 16-inch squares, so these are large squares. The rectangles are all 16 by 7.5. And then there's a 1/2 inch sashing right here. That would make half of the block. These two blocks down here are 8 inches. So we know that this sawtooth star is going to be in 2-inch increments. Each of these are going to be 2 inches. By looking at that, we also know that these strips are 2 inches. The sashing is 1/2 inch. That gives us 5 inches, which would make this strip 3 inches. So good things to think about when we're deciding what to put in the quilt. Because of the size, using what I knew on this square, because of the size of the quilt, I know that I thought these might be 1-inch sashings, but I can tell that they're 1.5-inch sashings. So these are 1.5 inch, and then that would make these outer borders 3.5 inches wide. With that information, we can take a look at what we might quilt. For all over quilting design, we've talked about the hook, and we've also used the hook with flower petals. And then we've used the hook with flowers and leaves and many things thrown in there. So what would we do if we wanted to quilt this all over? Well, we can incorporate the hook. We can actually use any of those designs or the first 2 designs. The problem with doing something like we showed last week with all kinds of flowers is that it would compete with everything that's already going on in the fabrics here. However, keeping to that hook thought process, it would look nice with simple flowers. I just put in 2 or 1. You can throw in some splays periodically. Anything that just will keep it simple. So I think this would be very simple and attractive for this quilt as an all-over design, if that's what the choice were to be. Now, what are some other things we can look at? Let's go look at a block. So here's one. So some ideas. What do I do with a rectangle block? Well, first of all, if we're going to do this by blocks, I would quilt at the very least, stitch in the ditch, these 16-inch blocks. So the length of the quilt, since I think it's a 3 by 4, just the length of the quilt on each side of the sashings and then the outer portion in the same way going horizontally. So I would stitch in the ditch at the very least that. But I personally would go ahead and stitch in the ditch the whole block. And you can simplify it. Going from here all the way over makes some sense that does 2 at a time. And then the rest of this star we would do just like we did on the stars previously that we looked at. So one option then is there's not a whole lot you can do with this rectangle. One is the grid. You can do a grid just one direction or both. Here I actually drew in what we used for the overall suggestion, but just spread that out and put that in that block. It may not be real dynamic on that block. I would choose probably a cream or a white thread that would look the same on every block, and then it wouldn't look too obnoxious on any of them, and that would be quick and easy to do on that block. Other ideas are bringing in the roses. Here we could put the rose in that center star block. I've got just an idea. You can put 2 leaves on it and then even a splay down here, but then you're going to have the rest of these points empty. Now if you stitch in the ditch, you could possibly live with that, but there might be a better idea. But I do like the idea of the flower, and then you can draw it all together. Plus I love doing that flower. Okay, so here we have the wishbone in that 2-inch block. We could copy the print up here, what we did up in this, and put it down in this small 3 inches, or we could do a grid in the block, would be another way to get more texture in the block, but perhaps keep it a little bit more simple. Here's an idea of using the ribbon candy as well. Any type of border designs, you could use your a C, circles, anything like that. Also, here's an idea of using that flower, but then just putting the continuous curves around the star points. Here is the idea of taking this print in this 3-inch block and just doing it directional. That's a single grid. However, what would you do, Penny? I love this. I really love this. Before we look at that, let's go over here. Here are some options should we want to do some background stitching in the star. So here are circles, heavily dense circles. And then if you're going to have roses, you got to have feathers of some sort. So here are some more densely stitched single feathers. And here's the same type of feathers, but spread out a little bit more. So it's not quite so dense around that star, which I might like in this situation, something that's not quite so dense. Now let's go look at what I really do like. So a combination of these. I like going with the leaves and hooks on these prints. Keep it simple, keep it easy. Probably use a white or an ecru background, probably, but you want to try out your threads. I really like using the wishbones in both of these with a grid between it. I think I would keep this 1/2 inch open. I don't see a lot of reason to quilt it, but if you did, you could come in with just, oh, that doesn't show up well. You could come in, and this is going to be red, but you could come in with the squiggles in there if you really wanted to do something in those. And you could do it up here in the long 17-inch one as well. I personally would hold off doing that until I quilted the rest of it because I'm not sure it needs it. I really love that flower in this quilt. And I would do continuous curves, but let's do something different. So we can just throw a little loop in there, kind of like an L or an E. Just throw a loop that goes all the way out into the point, and that keeps it simple but adds an attractive design. I really like that. Then I do like that simple, more open feather for some background quilting, and I would choose that. However, it's possible that you could get away with just the stitch in the ditch on this block. I think it would leave it too barren. You could do some straight lines going out. I contemplated that too, but that really pulls into this. You have to make sure it was different enough. Not sure I would like that. So I like that little single feather, and it's quick to stitch. For the borders, there's several options, and I'm not positive. We'll see which one I like. Anyway, this is really a great one with just going across that you can use the squiggles with. And the reason it's great, and there's a couple of blocks you can't do this with, but most of them you can, is that your sashing is 1 inch wide, but we have these 2-inch blocks that we can use easily to mark, and 1.5 by 2 can add a little bit of difference to that. So it would be kind of neat to use that. So it would be very easy to mark our 2-inch blocks on these. I would leave this block stitched in the ditch right around it, not do anything to it. But then coming back in that with the squiggles, you've only got 2 major strips going down that way and 3 this way, so it would go pretty quick. The other option, or some other options, are to use the here we've got upside down C's, or you could do the C's, but we've got a lot of that in here with the hooks, so I don't think I'd like that. You could also use the squiggles over all of that. I personally think that would be too much of that. You could also do a different type of a leaf. It's the same leaf, but when you finish, you're just coming up one time. We're not doing any fancy curve to it, and then you're going up into the next one, and then you're just echoing over that side into the next one. So it's a closer one, and it's just a continuous leaf. Or you can make it like we've shown before with a nice serpentine stitch, but this is only 1.5 inches, so it's not very big. So I think I would really prefer this whole set together with that, and then the little feathers in here. I would do the others before I did the feathers to make sure that I still liked that. What about that outer border? I really like tying those leaves into it, especially if I don't use them in this setting here. Ending it, sealing it with these leaves, I think would be attractive. And I do it simple. You could add in a splay, but just your hook on the top side, then change to the bottom, back up on the top, on the bottom, not to make it too full. And I've got 2 here, and then I really like doing that rosebud in the corner areas. However, what I like a little bit more than that is doing that whole flower. I think would really be neat. So I apologize, I've got her sticker here, but you could actually put the whole flower in the corners going opposite directions. As to whether you would do them all facing forward or whether you would have 2 going backwards on the top would really depend on how you put the flower in these star blocks. So that's another quandary. That would be up to the quilter. You can have all of your stars coming towards you, or all of your flowers with the rosebuds coming towards you, but you could change them. One could come this way, one could be facing to the left, one could be going backwards. You could change them into different directions, and that would make this a non-directional quilt in that case. Or you can make them all one direction. So you have a lot of choices to go with on this, and it looks like it would be a lot of fun. I want to go back to this one here just to end with that. I love that. I just really like how that is. It's really clean with this, so that's why I wouldn't put those feathers in too quickly, although I do think it needs something. So I hope you enjoyed how to quilt the quilt. We will see you on Wednesday for the Jelly Roll Race quilt. Another probably 6 designs that we can put on the Jelly Roll Race quilt. Have a great week. See you on Wednesday. Bye-bye now.